said it as a joke earlier today. I said, imagine it came down to a game winner, and I guess it happened. Nerve-wracking for sure. You know, I told JoJo in the huddle, I said, as long as you get that down, I got you.
So Josh is a former soccer player, never played football until his freshman year. So yeah, he's you know, good leg for us, does a good job on the kickoffs, ice in his veins, and knocked that through at the end there. Hey, that's a great team win right there, man. You should be so proud of yourself. We knew this was going to happen. You believed in it, you executed, you worked hard all week in practice, and this is the result right here. Number one team in the state. You can't see it. All right, hey, we got to keep going now. We got to keep going. Enjoy this. All right, and we're back to work now.
You think you're number one now?
But we better be. If it's up to the GameTimeCT guys, I'm not sure. They love the FCIAC teams, but I mean, we beat Darien, we beat Southington. I mean, what else you want us to do?
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Meat Grinder, your weekly dose of high school football in Connecticut. And I'm your host, Sean Patrick Foley. With me, as always, is Pete Paguaga. Petey, what's up?
Nothing much, man. This is it. We're going into the final full Friday night of the season. I can't believe we're already here.
Yeah, this is it. The last real Friday night game where everybody's involved. We've gotten through 9 weeks of the season. We're going to go to week 10, which means the week after that, you have a bunch of guys taking fives, and it's on to the Thanksgiving extravaganza, the tradition that won't die, and please don't ever let it die. Speaking of which, coming up on the show, we have the head football coach of Hamden High School, the athletic director, and one of the heads of the football committees, and it is Tom Dyer. Hamden coach Tom Dyer joining us. He's going to give his opinions on playoffs since he was kind of instrumental in that. Why 6? You know, is Thanksgiving on its way out? He plays in a pretty big game, the Green Bowl, and of course his team, West Haven, his team plays West Haven in a big 8-0 versus 8-0 game coming up at Ken Strong Stadium on Friday. But at the top of the show, you heard from the jubilant scene at Falcon Field in Meriden, where Maloney, Pete, upends number 1 Southington 31-28 on Josh Scaramuzzo's field goal in double overtime. An amazing game. What can you say about it? I mean, the main thing we can say about it is, yes, Mr. Fredericks, your team is the number 1 team in all the land, and a little congratulations. A great job by everybody. All overall, you couldn't ask for a better 1 versus 2 game. Lived up to the hype, and we even got an upset out of it, Pete.
Yeah, not what I was expecting going into that game. I mean, obviously Maloney's a great program, and Kevin Frederick has done an amazing job, since he's taken over. I believe it was 8 years ago, to get them to this spot. I will say this. I said this on the sideline a couple of times, because I had a couple of people come up to me and they're like, I've seen Maloney this year against lesser opponents, not really super impressed, and this, that, and the other.
You said that a lot.
I did say it, but other people said it to me too.
Okay.
And I don't know if there's a coach in the state who can get his team up quite like Kevin Frederick can. I mean, they get up for these games that matter a lot. And he does such a good job of pumping them up, hyping them up, getting them to play at a higher level. And it really is very impressive, because I've said it on this show. I thought Southington was the best team that I had seen all year in all 3 phases of the game. And Maloney just played incredible on Friday. Just absolutely incredible. There were no turnovers on either side.
Clean game.
Very clean, very clean. And you know what? The big players played well. Lincoln Cardillo had an awesome game for Southington. Josh Boganski, awesome game for Maloney.
Yeah, they were going blow for blow.
Yeah.
It was like I said on Twitter, it was like Rocky and Apollo. Which way this game going to go? It was like every round.
This was Rocky 2. This was Rocky 2, clearly.
Yeah.
But Kyle Valentine played so well down the stretch for Maloney. JoJo Gonzalez with the big catch. John Flynn with 2 touchdowns for Southington. The big boys played awesome in that game on either team. I saw Southington when I was walking out, and I saw Lincoln Cardillo and a couple of the guys, and they were staring at the scoreboard being like, all right, like now it's time to move on, focus on next week. There's a bigger goal at hand, but it was wild. I mean, I was nervous. I'm on the sideline. I'm like nervous. I'm like, oh my God, who's going to win? Or are we going to overtime? But I didn't say it out loud. But our friend Gabby at NBC did. So she jinxed everybody. Just a wild, it lived up to everything that we thought it would be.
Yeah, pretty much. So for my first time, that was the thing. I said, Pete, I don't think I've seen Maloney or Southington in years. And you're like, well, we got to go. Pete, we had a great time. It was nice. We got a little Kayla Mays, as you said, and we got there nice and early. Jeff Jacobs showed up, and then we saw Dama Mori from the Current. He showed up, and everyone the guys were there. All the stars were out. We even saw your old boss, huh?
Yeah, I got to see Brian Carpenter, which was great. Love BC. He was there. Pearson from WTNH. Mentioned Gabby from NBC. Boy from Splash Productions. Rain was there. I mean, everyone was there. It was awesome.
Took a little selfie here. I'll show the good one because I know Gabby was mad and I put up the other one. I thought she was posing. That's why she showed the other one. If you want to go on Twitter, you can see it. But she was mad. I'm like, what? I guess she was just doing her hair.
Yeah, it was just a great night. I mean, the game lived up to everything. It was just, I was exhausted after. I mean, I know Kevin said after the game to me that he was really tired and he needed something to eat. But when we got in that car, I finished writing my story. We were driving home. I was like, oh, I am beat.
Southington actually had a lead in that game, and there was a point where, Pete, you thought they just needed to run that clock, run the clock out. And I thought the one when they needed it, they had a chance late. I didn't talk to Mike Drury, you did, but there was a chance to win late, and it seemed like they didn't. I think there was like 3 minutes left. Maloney had gone for it on fourth down, didn't get it. It was like deep in their own end, and I'm like, all right, now there's like 3 minutes left, or it was like 4 minutes left. Good job by Maloney, but Southington only ran a minute of clock off before they had to punt it right back. They're throwing the ball a little bit, and they tried to run, but Maloney's defense forced the issue there. But also, I didn't feel like there was a lot of urgency, Pete, from Southington. I could be wrong. Maybe Cardillo needed the ball there, and maybe he was out. I don't know. I don't remember him carrying the ball that much on that drive. So it was a little interesting. So, and they were able to get the ball back, and bing, bang, boom, right down the field, and they were able to tie the game.
Yeah, not even bing, bang, boom down the field. They score. They're still down 2.
That's right.
And they got to go for 2. It was inches away from being over. And the ball tips up right into Dante Kelly's hands. And he had, you want to talk about, amazing. We talked about the big players who showed up for this game. If there's any kid in this game who just threw his name on our radar for All-State, it's Dante Kelly.
100%. Yeah.
I mean, what an unbelievable game by the junior offensively and defensively. I mean, he was locked in on John Flynn the whole game. I mean, he allowed 2 touchdowns to Flynn, but made 2 great batted passes or pass defense, whatever you want to call them, in overtime in the end zone on John. I mean, just a baller. Now, this is a Maloney team that had 24 interceptions last year, I believe. They had the Ball Hawks, right? Shelton, JoJo was on the team last year, Tylee Flowers. And you were like, how are they going to replace these guys? Never mind. Question answered.
Yeah. I don't know, though. I'm sure Southern was looking at that play there in the first, was at the second overtime. His arms were draped right over Flynn. I was shocked that Southern didn't kick up more of a stink about that. It was really close for a high school game. You know what? Maybe you keep the flag in your pocket there. You don't want to see that type of thing win it. But it was fourth down, right?
Yeah.
That was the path on fourth down. Looking at the replays, it looked like Kelly got there just before the ball did. Did he pull his arm down or anything? No, it didn't look like that. It could have been called legitimately, I guess. But the ball did take off Flynn's arms, and then it was right back to Maloney, and all they needed was a field goal. And there was a great play that was made in on Boganski on third down, But they didn't need. But they didn't need it. They go to Scaramuzzo, who's our guy. Apparently, he watches and reads everything. He's all on Twitter all the time.
I'm so happy for him because he has liked everything, retweets all the football posts, not just Maloney stuff. He's just a big fan of high school football in the state, so it was nice to actually get to write about him. But I will say, that was his first field goal of the year. Kevin said it to me, like, this is his first field goal. Like, we try to score touchdowns. We want touchdowns.
That's amazing. I didn't know that.
Yeah, first one this year. He had a couple last year. First one this year. Kicking's, I said this to you, kicking is not a big strength for either Maloney or Platt since Kevin and his brother Brian were at Platt. They were both pretty good kickers.
Oh, yeah.
But not really a strength for them. But, I was at games where Maloney, and when I was at the Record Journal, Maloney or Platt had a chance, and they just didn't have a guy who can kick. So they would go for it, fail. There was like a game against Windsor years ago, just like games where you were like, oh, my God, if Maloney had a kicker, they would have won. But no, it's nice to see. Great kid. Awful. I mean, it was not the greatest snap in the world.
No, but JoJo did a nice job getting that thing down.
Dude, that kid is just all around, just a great, great football player.
Yeah.
Got it down. Scaramuzzo hits it, and Maloney is undefeated. And they were pretty vocal about whether or not they should be number one or not.
Well, I think we all knew that they were going to be number one. Although with our voters, who the heck knows?
I'm shocked that it fell the way that I thought it would, or the way that I tweeted out that it should fall. It did.
Well, they don't make much, they don't do much movement. In fact, I think we'll get to it in a second. I think our voters, they're a little slow most times. But let's go to the top 10. We talked about.
Can I just quickly jump in? Now that Maloney's number one, I would like to give just a little word of advice for the Maloney people.
Okay.
Okay.
For him. Get a
To
message.
the Maloney fan group. Okay. No more we're slept on. No more we don't get respect. Okay. You were number 2 in the poll last year after you guys won the Class L championship. You are the defending state champions of Class L. Okay. You've been in the top 10 all year. You were number 2 going into the game against Southington. Now you're the number 1 team. I don't want to hear no more about we don't respect Maloney or we don't respect the CCC, because Southington was number 1 since week 3. Okay. And I said this to Kevin Frederick when he made the comment about, the voters, the FCIAC, all that. Totally get that. I said on this show and the Pick'em show, week 3, it is going to be the week of reckoning for the CCC when Southington knocked off Greenwich and Maloney beat Darien. I said it. Okay, so I'm tired of this we don't respect them thing. You guys are number 1. It's something Kevin has wanted. He wants to be number 1 at the end of the year. I totally get that. But this is what his plan was when he took over the program, right? Win state championships, be in the conversation for the best team in the state. You are not only in the conversation, you're at the head of the conversation right now. So I don't want to hear this disrespect or this and this. You're here. You wanted the X on your back. You have the X on your back. All right? We respect Maloney. The voters clearly respect Maloney, and we respect the CCC. This isn't like me with baseball.
Well, here's the thing I have a problem with. All these guys think that we do the ranking, like, specifically. You know what I mean?
That's true. We
like,
are
not
one
voting. We're guys. We ask people in the state. Now, you want to take the media to task? Okay, fine.
No.
That's fair because that's what it is. You look at it; those are first place votes. You see 21 after Maloney. They got 21 first place votes. West Haven got the other 2 first place votes. Okay, they're 8-0 as well. So that's not a bad one. But remember, guys, we don't pick the teams. We all vote on the teams. Now, are our voters a little weird sometimes? Absolutely. I mean, it took them they still haven't put Wyndham over Killingly, even though Wyndham lost, but still haven't done that. But it took them a while. But anyway, so it's a little odd. But again, let's go. Just going back and looking at the top 10. Here it is. Maloney number 1. 21 first place votes. The other 2 went to West Haven down at number 4, but Southington not too far behind at number 2 at 7-1. Number 3 is Greenwich, again, lost to Southington, so that's fair. Number 3, Greenwich. So you have a hierarchy here. Number 4 is West Haven, which probably doesn't have as good a schedule as those 2 teams, but it's not as bad as it used to be. They're going to have their chance this week, the next 2 weeks, actually. They got Hamden on Friday, and then 2 weeks later, not even, they got Fairfield Prep. So that's a huge swing here for West Haven. a team that didn't go to the playoffs. Now they're in, but so it's West Haven's time. They have a lot. They're going to have a say in this, no question. Number 5 is St. Joseph, Pete. It's Stanford, 17-13. Now, I know Riley Jordan was out, and he's been having a great week the last 2 weeks, but 17-13, St. Joseph, that's a little concerning. Although, unless you're kind of on the defensive side, I think, you're still in a decent spot there.
Yeah, that was very eye-opening and head-scratching and just what happened. But you win, you move on, you clean your hands, and you get ready for they got West Hill this week, and then Trumbull on Thanksgiving. So
it's a good game for St. Joseph. Figure out what would happen if Riley had to leave.
Survive in advance.
Yeah, so good job by Stanford. I know everyone's gonna give them pats on the back. I'm sure Stanford, at least they can try and build off this. But St. Joseph now they have West Hill coming up next. West Hill has really struggled. I wouldn't worry too much about St. Joseph unless West Hill hangs around. And then they got Trumbull the rest of the way. So it's kind of like practice for St. Joe the rest of the way. Number 6, Buchanan beat up a bit on Ludlow, 42-20. Ty Groff kind of getting his legs back. They're going to need him in the playoffs, and good to see him. 11 for 14, 82 yards and a TD. Nothing, that blows your doors off, but they need to get ready for Darien toward the end of the season. Number 7, Hamden. We'll talk to Tom Dyer in a little bit about his team. They beat up on Hillhouse, 35-0. 8, Ansonia, 8-0. They defeated Watertown. Now we get back to their playoff games here. They got Seymour, and then obviously they got Naugatuck the West Way, the one we're all waiting for. Can Seymour beat the Chargers? I doubt it, but regardless, they're going to be a top team in Class S. And then finally, some weird flip here, like I was talking about with the voters. Staples moves up to number 9, and North Haven down to number 10 by a fairly large, 22-point margin here. What did Staples do, guys, that really blew your doors off? 49-0. They didn't do anything else special. North Haven beat Hand 35-14, better than Fairfield Prep did, or some of the other teams did. I don't know what the situation is there. Here's my theory, Pete. Some of our voters just take the poll from last week and then readjust it. That's why.
I think so. I think that's the case. I think you'll see that when a team kind of sneaks in and someone doesn't have them on the ballot, and then when they vote the next week and they see, oh, this team was 8, they won. Okay, I guess I should put them in my top 15 now.
Exactly. just wow. So there's your top 10 poll, but that doesn't matter right now. I know Kevin, they're very thrilled. He wants to be number 1 at the end of the season, and to do that, you need to first win a state championship. The good news for Maloney is they take the number 1 trophy into unless they lose their next 2 games, they have it in their hands now. They have an opportunity to take the number 1 trophy into the Class L playoffs this week. So that said, now kind of the final number 1 team, it all depends on what Maloney does. If Maloney wins his next 2, goes on to win a state championship, nobody's taking the number 1 trophy away. It is in their hands right now. So a very rare spot there for Kevin and his guys. But let's look at the rankings. Now, again, we've been talking about this all year. They are just brutal. Everything's just a mess. It's getting a little tighter in some of the other divisions, but looking at Class L, you're pretty much finished here. Only thing we're really waiting on is who are going to be the final 2 spots. There's really just not a lot of teams left. The only teams that are left are Ridgefield, which just lost last week to Trumbull in a game that their quarterback Keller got hurt, and it could be out for the season.
Our guy.
Yeah, which would be a tough. He's been great the last 2, years. So it's been fun to watch him and all that stuff. But it's a tough break for him and Ridgefield. But looking at the rest of it, Glastonbury is number 8. Fairfield Prep is number 7. I think Trumbull at number 6. They have a chance to knock Danbury out and basically solidify their spot. Staples, Hamden, Southington, West Haven, Greenwich going up the list here. It's pretty much done. I think Prep needs to win 1 more game. They got North Haven this week. That'll do it. Or West Haven. That'll do it. Glastonbury will do itself a huge favor by knocking off Maloney this week. If not, then Simsbury. And then that will basically be the entire field unless these teams lose and opens the door maybe for the winner of Ridgefield Danbury, maybe. But then Ridgefield's got to beat Staples. New Britain, Crosby, they're going to have a hard time getting up in there. I don't really see it being. But.
No, neither do I. I think this 8 is pretty solidified. which it's kind of cool. You could start looking at potential quarterfinal matchups.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, look at it. Look, things will change, but right now, West Haven and Prep play the night before Thanksgiving, and if the standings stay the same, they'll play 3 days later, 4 days later. So, you know, that happened with Rockville and Ellington last year.
Yeah.
And Rockville won both of them. We've obviously seen it with New Canaan and Darien before, but I think it's usually in the semifinals. But that should be interesting. But, you know, Glastonbury, you know, we'll go to Greenwich. Again, this is all if everything stays the same. Trumbull to Southington, Staples, Hamden. Like, there are some intriguing potential matchups I see.
Moving over to Class L, St. Joseph with one loss is your number one team there, 7-1. It's just the strength of schedule thing with 255 schedule strength points compared to Maloney's 185. It's just St. Joseph's schedule we talked about all year long has been ridiculous. So they got a lot of wiggle room, and, you know, they win those last 2 games. They're going to be your number one seed going away. They may even have a shot at, if, let's just say, well, if Maloney wins 2, they'll probably grab it if St. Joseph loses. But still, St. Joseph has that one loss, getting your number one seed will be wild over at 8-0 Maloney. But we'll see. Number 3 is Naugatuck. Again, they have Woodland, and so Potent, Woodland, and Ansonia, but they're not in any danger of missing out here.
And Chet Hall is back for the Greyhounds.
Oh, that's good to hear. Well, glad to hear that. So that should change things a little bit. That'll be an interesting game for the Pinho Trophy at Woodland, which has got a heaping bunch of points there for them to maybe get a home game in the playoffs. Newtown still winning. They've won 7 straight games. You know, they got a tough game, couple games coming up left. New Fairfield, Massac, they're still not in danger of missing out here. If they get one of those, maybe we'll be looking at a home game. New Canaan at number 5. Ward and Darien left. They're going to be fine. They're going to be the big game. Well, was Shelton getting back into the mix. You know, they were struggling a little bit with Cheshire, which now sits in 7th place. But Ricky Fiola picks off a pass, goes 75 yards the other way. Shelton pours it on with 4 touchdowns and gets out of there 34-14. A big win for the Gales to put them back into a playoff spot. Still, they got Notre Dame and Xavier left. They should win at least one of those to make sure they get in. And then Cheshire didn't really move. Cheshire loses the game, doesn't move. They stay in 7th place. They're probably going to, unless they want to have to beat Southington, they're probably going to have to beat Xavier to make sure that they have a playoff spot to stay above the rest of the field, which includes Darien at 5-3. Darien's got McMahon and New Canaan left. Let's assume New Canaan beats them. Who knows, though? That game is always a toss-up. They'll beat McMahon. They can at least finish 6-4, maybe, Darien. The only X factor, well, the only realistic X factor here would be Middletown, which would put itself in the conversation this week by beating Wethersfield. If the Dragons beat Wethersfield this week, it could cause problems for Cheshire, Darien if they finish 6-4. Because the Middletown would have a good shot if they beat Berlin on the week before Thanksgiving. Middletown would probably get in over one of those 2 schools. Maybe even Shelton if Shelton can't finish the deal. So Shelton, Cheshire, and Darien at 6, 7, and 8. They need to each win once to at least ensure themselves a chance to get in there. If you win twice, you're probably going to outpoint Middletown. But that said, Middletown's going to get a lot of points. They're going to surpass somebody. So if Middletown wins 2 here, it's going to be really tough. Same kind of goes for New Milford, although they got Barlow and New Fairfield left. That's going to be a tall order for them. But they could, if they win those 2 games, they might put themselves in the mix too. So that's what Class L looks like right now. Any thoughts, Pete?
I'm intrigued by Middletown. I think I said it a couple of weeks ago on this show. Like, kind of don't sleep on them. Wethersfield's a really good team. They're young, but they're good. You know, Matt McKinnon does a great job. And then Berlin, we talked about Berlin when I saw them. Like, I was like, they have a really good chance to go 9-0. But Middletown's going to be this big school that they're going to have to face. I'm excited to see what the Blue Dragons can do. I mean, obviously the first one starts at Wethersfield, but it's pretty nice to see Middletown back in the mix this year.
Wethersfield with 7 wins is going to get them a lot of points and put them right. And they might even jump a Darien team that beats McMahon or a Cheshire team that beats Xavier. They're close. But the thing that's helping Cheshire, Shelton, and Darien out is that they have a ton of schedule strength points. And Middletown just doesn't. They play in the SCC, they play in the FCIAC. Middletown doesn't have, and Middletown's in the lower tier of the CCC, so they don't play the same type of schedule, and that's kind of hurting them a little bit. Anyway, moving on to Class Double M. Windsor seems to be making a move here at number 10. It's still a tall order here. They're probably going to need E.O. Smith to lose. But let's start at the top. SMSA 8-0, they're fine. Northwest United 7-0, they're fine. North Haven 7-1. They got Prep and Amity left. They're probably going to beat Amity. Fairfield Prep is the big one, but if they beat one of those teams, they're going to be in. Killingly 7-1. They are likely in. Stonington and Woodstock left. Thames River 7-0. They're going to be in. They have Platt, Tech, O'Brien, and Quinnebog left. Weathersfield, we just talked about them. Middletown, and then Newington. Both games are going to be tough. Newington, a rivalry game. And Newington has suddenly come on. Finally, Pete. Playing a little
they had such a tough schedule to start the year. I mean, that was just crazy. But they're back in it. Good for Newington. But, well, that game's always kind of a toss-up, too. I saw them a couple of years ago on Thanksgiving, and it was really close. And there was a lot of All-State players on that field that day.
If you can get to 8 wins here, you're going to be in a good spot. 7-3 will probably be a good spot for you. But, it might open the door for somebody else, especially if you don't have as good a schedule. So if Weathersfield wins Middletown or Newington, they're going to be fine. Platt getting itself back in the mix. But Platt has Bloomfield and Maloney next. Maloney, obviously, rivalry game, starter bowl, you never know. Bloomfield's on a roll. They haven't lost in 4 weeks or 4 or 5 weeks. So Platt, if they're number 7 right now, if they want to stay in the mix, they probably going to need to win one of those games. Otherwise, they could finish 6-4, and they could finish out of the running here.
I'm very intrigued by Platt. They're finally healthy. We talked about it. Bloomfield, this might be a good shot for Platt to get Bloomfield. Platt's only losses are to Berlin and North Haven, right? 8 and 7 wins. They got Bloomfield with 6, Maloney with 8. Yeah. That's a tough schedule. But I mean, come on, if the Stoddard Bowl on Thanksgiving morning comes down to playoffs, I mean, we saw what happened. We saw what happened in 18. I mean, that was wild. So, I mean, that game already has hype. It has like hype. And it's crowded, but playoff points, I wonder what Jason Bruin and his OC, Brian Frederick, will have up their sleeve this time. Because remember, in 2018, they came out in the single wing in the second half, and Maloney had no idea how to defend it. And got Platt into the playoffs, and they went to the semifinals, which then they lost to Maloney. But I just love that when the Stoddard Bowl or like a rivalry game like that means playoff implications. Sign me up. They got to get past Bloomfield first, though.
Yeah, they have to get past Blue. If not, that door is gonna open for them for anyone else below them. Massac obviously 6-2. They got Brookfield and Newtown left. If they beat Newtown, they're definitely in. If they beat Brookfield, they're probably gonna be in too, because Newtown's still gonna at least give them some schedule points there to play with. Same with Platt. Platt will play those teams. If they lose to both of them, they still get a lot of playoff strength of schedule points too. That might help Platt. But if you look down here, who else is catching them? Maybe Windsor, because Windsor also has Bloomfield. They'll get some points. South Windsor this week, they should win that game. If Windsor can finish 7-3, I think they'll have enough to catapult over E.O. Smith. And if Platt can't finish the deal, I like Windsor getting in at number 8, maybe even higher than that. We'll see. But Massac, again, I think Massac's going to be a good spot, especially if they can win both of those games. The Newtown one will be key. So that's Class Double M. Guilford didn't do itself a favor by getting knocked off by Foreign, even though, it was they were down 3 touchdowns late, made it interesting. But Guilford falling to 5-3, still have East Haven in hand left, probably not going to be enough points. Illinois, they're 6-3, and they have Norwalk left. That's it. They played 9 games. They're going to end their season this week. And then they play the waiting game and see if they can get enough points. They're going to need a lot of help there.
The long waiting game. Their final game is on November 10th. They're not going to find out their playoff potential or whether they're in or not until November 24th. That's 2 full weeks of waiting.
They should call Andy Guion up and find out what he did back when Xavier had to wait.
We should just have EJ. We should have EJ on the show. He could be our guest every week. We could go through it for him.
Yeah. He
listens to the show. I love EJ.
But that'll be tough. Cheney Tech is also down there with 3 losses, but they're going to need a little bit more than that. Beating ATI would probably help it. But They're at 795, and that's kind of tough right now. So I think right now I like Windsor's chances if it can beat Bloomfield. If it doesn't beat Bloomfield, then you open the door a little bit for Wilton, maybe somebody else. But if Platt loses, that'll help as well. So anyway, that's Class MM. Class M is, well, it's really a mess. Berlin and Law are fine. Notre Dame West Haven, we mentioned a billion times. Notre Dame West Haven can lose its final 2 games, Shelton and Hamden, which is certainly possible, and still make the playoffs here at 3. They're number 3 with 3 losses, which is ridiculous. They have 245 schedule strength points, and they're only going to get more with Hamden and Shelton coming up with. They're fine. Rockville's got Cromwell, Portland, struggling Stafford, and Ellington left. By no means are they a lock at 4, although I do think they have accumulated enough points here. ATI, Cheney Tech, Wilcox, Kaner, and Northwest United. Again, they have a tough schedule rest of the way. Ram, which is really just has a really tough time. They're 5-3. They're in number 6 place, but Bloomfield and Platt gave them the business the last 2 weeks. I think they were outscored 97-7. Ram. Avon left and Bacon Academy. They should win those games to get to 7-3, but. And then we get into just a mess here. Hartford Public had its game postponed from last week versus Northwest Catholic. I don't know when they're going to reschedule it. Have they rescheduled it?
They have not. It still says November 5th.
So I don't know what the deal is with there. Woodstock had a really interesting win over Fitch this week, 38-22. Good for them getting back on the. I know I don't like the playoff points and everything, but I do like the idea of teams that have been making a move up the ladder a bit and probably making the playoffs. Woodstock is in 8th place, and there's a bunch of teams. They're 4-3, not out of the woods yet. They got NFA, Enfield, and Killingly to finish. Then you have East Line below them. Lyman Hall could get in there maybe at 6-4 if everybody kind of loses around possible. Avon in the running. Anybody with 4 losses here is in the running for one of those final 2 spots. Ram, so Ram is in there, and Hartford, it's a mess at the bottom. I don't even want to begin to figure that one out. But the top of the division here, Berlin, Law, and Northern and West Haven are definitely in great spots. I think pretty much Law and Berlin are clinched, unofficially. Class SS, Cromwell, Portland, Wyndham, Pete, losing to Ledyard in overtime. James Green's mom didn't even believe that they could beat Wyndham. Well, James Green's mom was incorrect. Probably the quote of the year. He gave it to Mike Tomorrow today. I love to hear it. He scores the winner in overtime. They got smoked, Pete, by NFA. And then they turn around and beat arguably the ACC's best team.
Yeah.
So good for Ledyard. I counted him out. I mean, NFA hadn't beaten a soul to that point. So, good job by them. Now they're in, along with Cromwell, Portland's 1. Wyndham, obviously they're in 2. Foreign with their huge win over Guilford. Let me tell you about Logan Lee, who was a hero in that game. A 79-yard kick return touchdown that put Foreign up 35-14 with 10 and change left. And then Guilford comes all the way back. Mike O'Brien scores 2 of the 3 touchdowns. They get within 35-34 with 3:11 left. And who blocked the extra point? Logan Lee. Keeping Foreign undefeated at 8-0. Who had Foreign 8-0? I have no idea. Pete, I'm amazed by the Lions right now.
It's true. I mean, Jack Cushman, their quarterback, started last year, had an okay year. I think he only threw 9 touchdowns, had 9 interceptions. Completely different player. I think he's got 23 touchdowns, 3 interceptions this year. It's great to see from the Lions. I mean, I talked about it at the midseason with them and Law, and that Thanksgiving game is still going to be pretty packed.
Well, one loss between them if all goes well. I mean, Foreign's got to play Amity this week. I don't know. That's, I know Amity has struggled, but Amity Tier 2, Foreign Tier 3, who knows? And then Law, which should be get your tickets now for the Battle of Milford.
The Mayor's Cup.
Is that what it is? The Mayor's Cup?
Mayor's Cup, yep.
Barlow at 7-1. They're number 7-1. They're number 4 ranked. They got New Milford left. New Milford with a big win. I didn't mention big win over Bunnell to push to give itself a shot in Class L, but like we said, with that'll be a tough one for them. But Barlow plays New Milford. They can knock them right out with a win there, and then Weston finish off. I think Barlow should be okay. I think they'll win those 2 games and be okay. They're okay anyway. They're going to get in. Valley Regional is kind of a week behind everybody. They got 3 games left. Correct, Old Saybrook, and HK. I think Valley is better than all 3 of those teams. I think they win them all to make that. So that's 6 teams right there. Ledyard's 5. Number 7, Granby Canton. Luke Marr, baby.
Your boy.
My boy. Sending us the clip on Instagram. Here it is. Luke Marr with a 95-yard fumble recovery touchdown to kind of cap off a pretty big victory over Morgan that gets them to 6-2. It was 38-22 over Morgan to get them to 6-2. They're in 7th place, and they've got Capital Prep this week, and then Coventry. I think they will win those games, and basically that's 7 teams right there. The last one we're waiting on is either Ellington, which has got Morgan, Craig, and Rockville left, or Gilbert Northwest Housatonic, which has got Waterbury Career and St. Paul left. They should win those 2 games. I think Ellington has the tougher road because they got to play Rockville, and you know what happens in that rivalry game on Thanksgiving week, Pete.
Yeah, it's the Route 83 Bowl, I think it's called. I could be wrong, but they played last year for playoff positioning. Rockville got in, and then they played against. They both got in, but Rockville got the home game, and then they played again a couple of days later. Obviously, great rivalry. Rivalry in a sense of, the teams are rivals, but obviously we know the story of Keith Taucus and Eric Knickerbocker and how they kind of, Eric came up in the Keith Taucus coaching tree. Right. So it's nice to see those games matter up in the Pequot this late in the year. It's pretty fascinating. It's
going to be tough, though. They're going to need every point they can muster in that. And they're going to need to beat Rockville, and then those teams are going to need to help them out a little bit. Gilbert, same deal. They're going to need to win their final 2 games. I think they should. It's going to be that's going to be the nail biter on Thanksgiving week, perhaps. Rocky Hill's kind of on the outside looking in there. They got Tolland left and Cromwell Portland. Let's just say they beat Cromwell Portland and Tolland. That would put them in the mix, perhaps, for a spot here, but they have some ground to make up. After that, it's no-go for any of those guys below number 10 there. So it's only a 3-team race for 1 spot, basically, in SS, and good for them, I guess. But for the rest of us, I wish the rest of the division was up for grabs. Anyway, number at Class S, Holy Cross got beat, Pete, by Woodland. We were kind of like, Woodland gets a vacation. Now they got to play a real team. Well, I mean, what happened there?
I don't know. It's the Dave Stewart curse.
Darren Gaspari ran for a touchdown, threw for a touchdown, and then they built a 20-point lead. Holy Cross didn't know what hit them. They only scored on the final possession of the game, a Legie run. That's a disappointing effort by Holy Cross. Woodland obviously needed that game to make sure it would be in the top echelon of Class S. I didn't think they had it in, but Joe Leda was pretty fired up about that win. They're now in with Ansonia here at number 1. Holy Cross, despite losing to Woodland, is still number 2 in Class S at 6-2. Then Woodland, then Bloomfield. We talked about them. They got Platt and Windsor left. By no means are they out of the woods yet, although I still think they get in because we'll see in a second, you get to the bottom, no one's going to touch them. New Fairfield 7-1. They got Newtown and New Milford left. I think they're going to be fine. Seymour's got Ansonia and Woodland left. If they lose to Ansonia, that puts them at 3 losses, and then they're probably going to have to beat Woodland just to stay afloat here, just to make sure they have a good spot. But East Catholic, E.O. Smith, and Northwest Catholic, they beat those teams. They'll be fine. The only way I see anybody else, Oxford now hanging on to the number 8 spot at 4-4. So now it's a dogfight with a bunch of 4-4 teams for that final spot. So basically this is, unless Seymour and East Catholic lose their next couple games, which is certainly possible, especially from Seymour's perspective, it's basically all these 4-4 teams, HK, WCA, North Brantford, Northern Fairfield, Griswold Wheeler, 4-4 teams all fighting for 1 spot there. I couldn't tell you. I know HK's got 3 more games. I couldn't tell you who's probably going to win that. I mean, Oxford's got I don't want to say easy. They got to play Crosby this week. If they beat Crosby, they're going to get a ton of points with Crosby being a double L school. And then Derby, I think they went through their new Thanksgiving game. Maybe Oxford gets in there unless, HK wants to beat Valley at the end of the year. It's going to be tough for those other teams. And so I think Class S is almost set, give or take a few games here. But that's your divisional setup, Pete. Again, I haven't done the points yet. I know a lot of these teams have officially clinched already. I just don't know quite which ones are. There might be one or two surprises. It's all about seeding anyway. You win this week, we'll take a much closer look at it to say who's got what, needs what. But it's all going to be about seeding, give or take a few spots here. And again,
here we are. We called it at the beginning of the season.
Speaking of the playoffs, let's bring one of the guys, the architects, to get this thing done and get his thoughts on why and where and what the future is for playoffs and talk about his big game coming up this week. It's Hamden head coach Tom Dyer. Joining us now is the athletic director and head football coach. How many times do you hear that these days? It's Tom Dyer of Hamden. He's made his way up at Hillhouse, and then he came over to Hamden, and now getting the Green Dragons off to a great start. Big game this week, and the one we've all been waiting for against West Haven, their rivals. Welcome to the Meat Grinder, Coach.
Thanks. This is like the pinnacle of my coaching career, getting invited to the Meat Grinder finally by Boley. I almost fell over when I got this call.
Well, then I'm taking credit for it because I texted late Friday night. We were driving back from Meriden, and I said, I was like, we got to get Dyer up. We got to get Tom on. This is the perfect week. So I'm going to take 50% of that credit.
Right.
I appreciate that, Pete. I appreciate that.
Yeah. We had to get him on because first we went to his first game in a while, right? Tom, we knocked him over the feather there.
We addressed that, Boley, when he came. At first game, I've seen you in a while. You're kind of like a unicorn a little bit. We don't see a lot of flying unicorns, but you came by, checked us out, and we were excited to have you at that game. And we'll be excited. I'm sure we'll have great coverage of West Haven.
Oh my God! Yeah.
On Friday night, because West Haven's a hell of a team, and deserves everything. The accolades they've been getting so far this year.
Wall-to-wall coverage. But you were absolutely right. I would drive. I live in Hamden. I live out here in sunny Whitneyville. And I drive by Hamden High School every time to go watch Greenwich play. So there you go.
Exactly. See, at least you're admitted. First step to admitting.
Yeah. And I can see it. I can see what's going on because they knocked down all the trees there. I can now see the whole field. I always see if I can see Tom out there doing his thing.
It's crazy.
I don't know. I usually see his assistants, but
2 years ago, I was in Hamden for like 3 years, and I never went to a game at Hamden either. But I always make my way to that preseason scrimmage.
That's it. We had a good one this year.
Yeah.
I remember Pete was snapping pictures. He was double duty in that day.
Well, we thought you guys were going to be pretty good. You guys lost some pieces last year, but what did you think you had back to and listen, and we kind of gave you a hard time about the schedule last year. This year, if you look at it, it's not much different than the other double L's in there. So, you guys did a great job last year. It was 8-2. Going against Darien, and you guys hung in there and then played some great games, beat West Haven. So, but you had some pieces you guys lost. And what did you had back to make maybe even be a better team this year?
Well, this is the first time since I've been here we had a kid come back at the quarterback position. We've lost a few kids transferring out in my time here when they were young, and we started some guys. But JJ Gibson came back. And I think just knowing you had a guy at that position where you're not starting from scratch was a big help to our kids. We got about 14 seniors right now, and we got a pretty good sized junior class. So we had some kids that played last year that when they played, they were kind of role players or did little things for the program. And last year we had a pretty good senior group, some all-state players for us, Cam Winder, Ray Morales, Julian Aguilar. Those guys were great. We were able to do some things, but we had to win a lot of close games. We weren't there yet to kind of really put some points on the board, and we had to do everything right to win. This year, we've been fortunate. Everybody's a little older. Some guys matured. The work that they put in the offseason has really showed for most of the year. But ultimately, I think the credit goes to the kids for the work that they put in to improve. and, hitting the weight room, hitting the books, doing what they're supposed to be doing. So, they've done a great job up to this point so far.
How hard is it? Hamden's a big school, and guys for years be like, "Oh, why can't they do great stuff?" But there's a lot of stuff going on there, as you know, as AD.
Yeah.
You guys got a lot of competition. You got a lot of schools coming in there going, "Whoa, we love." You had the kids, Tariq Black and all those guys from way back go to Cheshire Academy. They're all Hamden guys. How do you keep kids here? I mean, how do you keep a guy like JJ in here? How do you get them, convince them to buy into this?
I think I don't know if it's convince them to stay. I mean, ultimately, you're talking about somebody's education and parents being comfortable going to the high school. Hamden High School has a lot of great things going on about it. We don't do the advertising that, say, a private school would do, whether, a Hamden Hall or a Notre Dame and Xavier kind of stuff, or prep. They have those big, you see those signs all over every town that you drive through right now about open houses they have. But I mean, there's a very strong education that's given to Hamden students. We've had kids going to Harvard and Yale and things like that. And I think ultimately just doing a better job showcasing our students and student athletes is something that we could continue to do to let people know that your son or daughter will be successful if you come to school here. And I think that's the battle that many public schools are getting in right now. And again, when you go to a school as large as ours, 1,700 kids, and that's definitely a lot of kids, but there's a lot of diversity in our school. And by diversity, it's not just, race and ethnicity, but it's about kids from different backgrounds and things like that, kids speaking different languages and from different places. So it makes a really good melting pot. And, it's a good opportunity at our school for kids to get prepared for the real world.
Certainly. So, I mean, obviously I live here and I see exactly what you're talking about. Notre Dame, you got Xavier, and that's not something a public school does. And, so I can imagine, but what does it take? I mean, everyone kind of immediately thought, Tom, you would jump right in and all of a sudden you guys are going to be Hillhouse circa 2010, 2013, 2012, when won state championships, but that wasn't the case. Give me a little idea of how different it was and what you had to do to get back to playing at the level you as a coach expect yourself and your players to play.
I remember, I'll take you back. The first game I coached here was against West Haven. And on the first play of the game, we jump off sides. And on the second play, our quarterback fumbles the mesh with the fullback, and their defensive lineman picks it up, scoops and scores. And it was much different because the last time I was on the football field before that was the state championship and holding a plaque at the end of it. I think ultimately, when I came on board, a coach isn't come and just call a play or a system and all of a sudden it's just going to work. There's infrastructure that has to be done, coaching staff alignment, youth program alignment, weight room, academic support, things like that. Todd Dowdy was a great guy, great coach. And he took it over from Tony Martone as I was just getting here. And I mean, there was things that, he was trying to do that he wasn't able to do. And then when I came on, I took basically all the coaches that wanted to return. I took back. I didn't bring any of my former staff or anybody with me. So it was an eye-opening experience for me working with people that I didn't know a lot at the time. And it was good. And, my defense coordinator now, Paul Panarone, was just a young coach then. But he was a guy that started coming to the weight room every day and helping me out. And I was like, you're going to do the defense and sit down. Let's talk about how it is. Now, when I look at Paul, I think of it's it's a beautiful mind. And when he's thinking about stopping somebody, he sees the numbers floating up in the air. That's what I think about Paul, what he's doing at his house on Sunday, breaking down some film. So, I mean, it's been good. We've had some good buy-in from our youth, Hamden Hurricanes. And ultimately, the thing that's changed is our kids and our school community understand the expectations that come with playing football. That there's a commitment in the weight room, that there's a commitment in the academics. We still do study hall 2 days a week, all year round, and things like that, because, being part of our program, it's more than just the Friday night wins and losses. And that's what people are measuring me on, obviously, as a head coach. but there's been a lot of change in the program over the 7-8 years.
So you were obviously at Hillhouse. You won a couple of state titles, like you mentioned. Then you take the job at Hamden as the athletic director in 2013. Yeah. Did you ever think that you would coach again? Because, I remember when you took the job at Hamden, you took the athletic director's job at Hamden. I was just starting out, and everyone's like, oh, they got a great football coach in the building. Why isn't he the football coach of the program that he's the athletic director of? Did you ever think that you'd be back on the field coaching at the high school level?
It's something I always wanted to do. Like, my passion for coaching is there. And I mean, when it stops, I'll stop. But I think that's the greatest thing of my job, is being able to coach and really get to know kids. As an athletic director, you're sometimes just dealing with the problems and the things that happen. But my ability to be a coach, talk to kids and be able to help educate and help them through problems, because, no matter where you are, kids are going to, need some advice or a role model. So, I take that pretty seriously. And I think ultimately when I first got here, I took the job in August, and I was lifting with my previous team up until I remember the day having to go talk to those kids and telling them I was leaving to take this job. It was something in my career that I always wanted to do, is be an athletic director. I just didn't think it would have happened as young as it did, in my 30s at a school like this. But it was an option, and the kids were happy for me. And some of those guys I still talk to, but there was no way I could have left and ever felt comfortable jumping in with another team, leaving that group of kids that I left behind, because, kid Harold Cooper, I'm leaving him going into his senior year. Right. You want to talk about a great kid and a great player. And there was a host of other kids there too on that squad that team had some talent to be competitive. So, when I went in, I wanted to be able to support my coaches, and I thought it was very important to get in and dive into my programs. And I wouldn't have been able to do that if I was coaching. But it gave me 2 years to really evaluate and look at things and be able to support coaches and things, and people learn me and I learn about them, and try to grow all of our programs, not just the football program, when I took over here.
So then, it's a couple of years, the position opens up. You're obviously a part of the committee that hires coaches, because you're the athletic director. So, did you walk
I
into
wasn't
the
on the committee to hire the football coach, to be honest with you.
No?
So
Okay. That was my question.
I remember at the time I talked to the principal, and I just said, it's something I'd be interested if you guys would allow me. And if you would, I want nothing to do with the hiring. You can do it. If you don't want me, if it's not something you guys will let me do, then, I'll start getting a committee together and doing everything. And I think there was some back talk with Board of Education and who was comfortable with what. And we're fortunate they were in agreement with me trying it out and getting involved, so it's worked out. It's also worked out. We have Amanda Forcucci, who's the director of phys ed in our district. She's our girls basketball coach, and she does a hell of a job with her program. So it's opened a door for a few other things to happen like that in our district.
I just imagined you walking in with a blank resume, being like, look, I don't know who this is. Got a couple of state titles on here. No. I don't know. No. He applied. Here's his number. And then they texted and your phone buzzes right
Yeah, no, I didn't get any random Zoom call interviews or anything like that. I think ultimately, each time a job comes open, it's something that, a district has to take seriously. And, I was fortunate at the time, our current superintendent, Gary Highsmith, was the principal. And he had he had a vision for what it could look like, and allowed me to be part of it.
Yeah, I can see Tom already taking all the resumes and putting them underneath a pile or putting them in the trash. I don't know why nobody wants this job. I guess
interviewing yourself. What would you do here? And then you turn around, you answer your own question.
Yeah, looking at the mirror. Self, what would you do? One of those Saturday Night Live skits,
But you take over, and it's been a process, right? I think we saw it reach, going 8-2 last year, making the playoffs. Like Sean said, you beat West Haven, then you beat Notre Dame West Haven in the Green Bowl for the first time
that was big.
In a long time.
Yeah.
And now you're 8-0. You're facing West Haven, who's also 8-0, and you got West Haven and Notre Dame West Haven to finish the year. I mean, was this always part, like, did you have like a 5, 6 year, 7 year plan, or like a 2 year, you know what I mean? Like, is this where you expect it to be eventually?
I mean, expected to be, it's tough. When we started out the way we did, and we took some beatings that first year, took some tough losses, but I don't think we would be here today if those kids, when I first took over, weren't working as hard as they did, because each year, you build upon the culture one year after another, and it keeps on rolling in. So, I think about the kids that were playing back then when we weren't as competitive as maybe we could have or should have been. But the kids each year and the seniors each year have risen up. The level of leadership that we got from our players has improved each year. And I mean, right before COVID, we had a pretty decent team, but we were a player or two away. We lost a tough game to Sheehan that got them into the playoffs and knocked us kind of out of any hope of doing anything. And then, it was really tough to come back in 5 days and play Notre Dame, and we lost there. And so, some people were like, oh, down season. I thought that season told a lot about our kids and the fight we had. And then it kept on brewing. And then, over COVID, we made a real commitment. I had a great staff, Paul Panarone, Chris Trefone, Greg Trefone, Brax Portier, Jake White. These guys all, we did Zoom meetings with our kids, and we checked in on things. We did leadership training. We did things like that where, we still worked on trying to improve our program, even though we were dealt a pretty bad hand not being able to play football that year.
Tell me a little bit about this team. Obviously we talked a little bit about JJ, but I saw you guys getting prep. You had a bunch of guys out, 2 running backs out, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
And
we had
you had a Cameron come in, he played amazing. But so you guys have a lot of depth. I mean, you're one of the largest schools in the state, but what did that, what did that do for you? That game, considering you had to overcome some setbacks, and against a team that went to the state final, and what did coming into that game, what were you just talk about how pivotal that game was for you guys? I
mean, the prep game was there. Prep came in just with a really tight loss to New Canaan 14-7 and holding New Canaan to like under 125 yards of offense or something like that. So, I mean, we watched a film and prep. Prep's going to be a playoff team. Prep is a very good team. That's probably one of the last teams I would be excited to see in the playoffs. I can tell you that. Not at all, because those guys are a good football team, well coached. But I mean, going in, I think that was a test for our guys and for them to prove to themselves that they actually belong with them and belong in one of the, that we're a good program, that we've changed the narrative and things like that. It's tough. Everybody always says this and says that about your team and your program and your school and your community. So in order to change that, you got to go out and do something about it. And our kids, we played a heck of a game, by far our most complete game that we played all year. Besides, I mean, JJ's a junior and his best days are still even ahead of him. But, when you talk about some of our seniors, Travion Singleton, our free safety receiver, he had some huge catches in that game. Also had an amazing interception that really changed the course of that game. Anthony Bolden catching the ball, toe tap there at the end of the game, but also some big plays on defense. We have Dan Lindbergh, a tight end, just this last week, it was the band senior night at our game, and he went out and played at halftime with the band in his uniform, so we got a real mixture of some kids, Jaden Bordeaux, but there's 3 guys that I think really go unheralded. And it's our senior captain, Russ Lassane. He's a 2-way starter at center and defensive tackle. And our 2 guards, Karan Harrison and Jaden Wesley. None of those guys are over, 6 foot, but those guys work hard. And, each and every year they got better. And we're in a position we are able to run the ball and do some things because of the work that those guys put in. And, those are like the mushrooms. They grow in the dark and nobody knows anything about it. Kind of, that's the kind of guys those guys are. And, without guys like that in your program, it's very tough to get it going. And, so our senior class has done a pretty good job with leadership. They've managed the locker room well. they've managed adversity well when we faced it. So, I'm excited for them, especially our seniors, to see all the hard work, because when they came in, where the program was, and now when they're leaving it, where the program is now.
Yeah, you got your senior class for sure, but your juniors, you mentioned Gibson, Kemp, Mills. I mean, they're all coming back.
Yeah.
And that's, is that something that maybe, other kids in the school can look at and say, like, hey, we're successful. We got a lot of guys coming back. We want to be a part of this. We want to be a part of this because you guys are having fun. You're winning games. I'm sure, people are talking at the school like, hey, we're 8-0, like we're playing West Haven. Everyone's got to go to the game. And now do people then want to become part of this if they're incoming freshmen or sophomores, and maybe juniors going to be seniors?
Yeah, I think ultimately any program, anytime you have success, numbers generally sometimes will help out, but we have an expectation, and not everybody loves the sport enough to be part of that expectation. And some people would rather be a manager or fan, and we'll find ways for people to be involved if they want to be involved with the program. Everybody always thinks like large school, you should have large roster. That's not always the case. When I first started here, some of the rosters we've had, there's a reason why we've been in Division II, because our rosters have been very similar in Division II. Little success last year and success this year. Now the next thing you know, our roster's growing a little bit. Now everybody's like, oh, you guys should be playing this guy. And I'm like, hey man, you look at a 15-year record or even a 25-year history of our league. I think Hamden and Cross were the two teams that had the lowest win percentage.
Yes, that's true.
For a while. So hence why we were in Division II for when we are. Our goal is to get out of it and eventually, be able to step it up and be one of those perennial programs that has success year in and year out. And there's still things we need to do in our infrastructure to improve that, to make sure those things happen.
Yeah,
you talk about Division II in the SCC, and we talked about the numerous hats you wear, right? You wear an athletic director hat, you wear the head football coach hat. You're also part of the football committee for the CIAC, and it just seems like that kind of two different things are happening, right? In the SCC, you have schools that are moving up because of their success, schools being moved down to play smaller schools to hopefully help build the program back up. And then when you look at the state, it's like, well, it doesn't matter where you are as long as your enrollment's high, you're in double L. You know what I mean? Like, so how do you try to figure out what's what, and someone who's on the inside of a lot of this?
Well, I was asked to be part of the football committee after the football season was canceled. So it was definitely an interesting time to get on that. Since then, I was part of a group to bring in the 6 divisions. And one of the reasons why I know Bowley's a hater of it, because, I read his stuff and he's always slamming it. But the thing is, ultimately, if we want to grow programs, we have to give kids the opportunity to have a chance to go to the playoffs. In almost every other sport, it's 40% wins and you make the playoffs. I think back to West Haven last year was 8-2. And they didn't go to the playoffs. If there was a 16-4 basketball team that didn't make the basketball playoffs, would there be outrage in our state?
Yes,
absolutely. So it's the same equivalent of what's happening, now. So we try to open it up, because leagues, some leagues aren't going to change the way that they schedule. It's not going to be competitive based scheduling. You started to see the SCC started it a while ago. We've been doing it. I think there's been some success at it. I think the CCC's slightly doing that right now.
Yeah.
So it's just tough when each of the leagues is controlling the schedule. Each league has a different model or what they feel is best for their constituents. So therefore, having a state playoff system set on one criteria and all the leagues scheduling differently, it makes it tough. So then you go back, with something like the district model, would that ever work? Maybe it would. Would people be willing to let go of the league scheduling if that happens? I don't know. But ultimately, there's a lot going on. Hopefully there's some things with the summer and out of season coaching that will be changing soon. that will also be able to help programs grow, not just in football, but all sports. So, I mean, there are a lot of different hats. There are states that do it differently. There's, socioeconomic indicators that some people use in the formula. There's other things that are like these secret formulas, like they got down in New Jersey that some guy made up that they can't share with anybody. But, I don't know what the right answer is. I just think that towns and communities go through ebbs and flows like public high schools, and it's tough. I think, I listen to a lot of what you guys read and write, and I talk to a lot of coaches, and, some people are like, well, the privates and publics. Well, why is the tech schools in? All these kids lift weights. All these kids do it. All these kids deserve an opportunity, no matter what school you go to. But how do you differentiate a school of choice with a tech school versus a private school like Fairfield Prep? Or how do you do somebody that has a VOAG program and those things? So our school has so many nuances to it that I think add to the complexity of the scheduling piece. And that's why each league does it a little bit different, because they look at all their parts and try to make it whole. And if you do that on a state level, there's always going to be somebody that's going to be ticked off. And I do think, though, that they're very open-minded to ideas and suggestions. Glenn and Greg, Glenn Longarini and Greg Simon are very open to suggestions, and they're always for making sports better, whether it's football or any of the sports.
Well, again, the point, though, is that, the leagues, as everybody's playing a different schedule in the leagues and they're held to a different standard at the state level, what's coming out? Like the SEC is going to schedule by power. You have a bunch of other leagues scheduling by power. Shouldn't the state just kind of, we all get together and say, like, look, here's the standard. We'll do it this way. Shouldn't we all mesh is really what I'm saying. Like, if the state's just going to do strict enrollment, then that's how the state should schedule, the league should schedule. And I know that's difficult. And I know that there's a lot of things there, but go ahead, Tom.
And again, I mean, is 900 students at one school similar to 900 students at another school? If I have defined borders versus somebody else.
Right.
So again, there's states that use multipliers and things like that. I just, as far as our scheduling goes, I think one of the things Al and the scheduling committee does a good job of is, there's so many political forces pushing on things when you're making a football schedule and, we're going to do this or this. I think trying to be fair to all of your teams is the most important thing. Now, I hear what you're saying. You look at a team like Shelton, that's a hell of a football team that has some tough losses this year. One of the things I think that was put in a year ago is that success modifier. And, we're going to have probably there's a good chance that there's 2 5-5 teams that might make playoffs. And there's a chance they're SEC teams.
Yep. Now
you look at both of those teams and there's going to be outrage. They're 5-5. Then you look at their schedule and you're like, hell, man, they played this team. Those are good football teams. So they are getting rewarded for playing a good schedule. So there is some benefit to playing a stronger schedule. As years past, it used to really be apples and oranges you were comparing, because this team played a bunch of good teams. This team didn't play anybody. This team went 7-3 with a great schedule. This team went 9-1 with a crummy schedule. They went in. I mean, like right now we're undefeated, and our strength of schedule is not as high as a one-loss Greenwich schedule at this point.
No, right. Correct.
And even if we went out, and you know what? That's fine. It is what it is. That's the schedule we were given. We play the games. It's our responsibility to get in based on what we had. But, when you make these schedules too, Sean, they're not like made in August after you know who's coming back and who transfers into a building. These things are made a year or so in advance, or 2 years in advance. And you're trying to be as fair as possible, equitable as possible anytime you make any schedule, not just a football schedule.
Do you think, though, because you mentioned, before the success modifier and all that, the apples and oranges, I mean, I think they still exist with the NVL and the P Quad and even the CTC not being in the scheduling alliance. And say what you want about the scheduling alliance, but when you look at Class M and you got North Haven, who's 7-1, I mean, they're having a great season, but you look at that schedule and you're like, one thing goes wrong, they could be 5-5 on the outside looking in on an undefeated Pequot school two undefeated Tech schools,
Teams they would
and you're
crush,
like, they're not playing the same thing, because North Haven's a tier 1 football team in the SCC.
Absolutely.
And they've earned that. They've earned that themselves, but now they're playing in double M, and you're like, I saw Northwest United. I've seen Bullard Colby twice. I probably have seen Bullard Colby more than anyone else who's not on the coaching staff there. And like, they're a good program. Derek does a good job there, but they're not the same as North Haven because of who they play, but they're playing for the same spot in the playoffs. Playoffs.
Playoffs. All right, Jim Mora. I think when you look at it, I mean, is the way that we're breaking down our divisions just based on enrollment going to be the best thing in the future? I don't know. I think we need data on what the 6 divisions looks like in a year or two. And I think you have to look at what are other things other states are doing, and how do we change it from there? And again, it's something we have to evaluate. It doesn't mean I'm speaking like we're going to be changing something. It's not the case. But I think you have to look at it, and you really have to do a deep dive. A lot of things changed after COVID, obviously, programs and the size of schools, like certain schools grew, certain schools shrunk, things like that happened in certain communities. So with that, you have to evaluate it all, and each and every year you look at it, you get some data, and then people look at it. You look at what basketball has done with the CIAC basketball divisions, and there's a formula there. And does that work for other sports? I don't know. Does it work for football? I don't know. But you need to have data to look at some things and look at it. But now with a first year of 6th division, you'll look at it. I
think there's something to be said about not. I mean, and I know a lot of the coaches want to have more opportunities, and you guys have said that about the divisions, and I'm fine with that. I think there's a way to do it if you took the Tech schools because they're not all Tech schools in the Tech division. Let's be honest, there's only 4 who are strictly. So you take all the schools that want to co-op. I think that there's 30 of them. Them and the Tech schools, there's 30 of them. That's a division right there. I think that'd be a great division. How about making that instead of having 6 just randomly, and then maybe pull out, maybe you pull out some other stuff. I don't know. I really don't know, Tom. I don't,
it sounds like a good off-season article for you to get right in.
Yeah, no, that's what it sounds believe me, I will be doing more on this because you know where I stand. But you are actually in another unique position. You have one of the most storied, Thanksgiving Day rivalries, and there's all talk about they want to go 16 teams. They want to start the playoffs in like they do in Massachusetts now. Massachusetts got rid of their Thanksgiving Day games, or they didn't get rid of them. They de-emphasize them, and a lot of coaches got really upset by that. A lot of rivalries just kind of fizzled because who wants to play in the middle of a playoff run? But long story short, they want to. There's and that's a system. It would just take away Thanksgiving. Now, let's be honest. A lot of schools who are in contention are scheduling further and further away from Thanksgiving, and only a handful are basically sticking to that tradition. So, I mean, do you see you're at Hamden, so this is the Green Bowl, people are there going, what do you got, Tommy? What do you want to get rid of this? So you're in a tough spot, right? And where do we want to get rid of it? Do we, I know we
first of all, growing up in New Jersey, I also played in a Thanksgiving Day football game, 4 years of high school.
Right.
And it's something special to do that. There was one year we did a Wednesday night when Tom Arcucci was the athletic director. And that was interesting as well, but it definitely took away from a little bit of the allure of, Thanksgiving morning. Again, when you start looking at schedules and you see as many people that are not, there's a lot of schools right now that are not playing on Thanksgiving morning. They're playing Wednesday night, Tuesday night, even Monday night.
Which is unfortunate. I think it's
what's going on. So, to me, it comes down to, what's best for you and your community, what matters the most to kids. And that's how I try to make decisions. I love playing the Green Bowl with Notre Dame. I think Notre Dame would say the same thing. It's always a great thing. It's a great game. A lot of families and old families, whether they're from Notre Dame or Hamden, come back sport. And it's the same way in a lot of places, but there's also some people, I know some of our Boots Club moms would love not to, get breakfast for our boys on Thursday morning because they're cooking for people coming over to their house, and, the chain crew, your ticket takers, and everybody that's working on a holiday.
Everyone gets some tea, right?
So there's a lot that goes to it. I think, ultimately, whatever direction the state goes in, we'll be ready to move and do whatever we need to do because, playing Notre Dame is important to us here. And I think it's the same for Notre Dame playing us. So, we love playing on Thanksgiving right now. But, it's something that could go by the wayside soon. And I don't know, because I do, like I said, I look at who's playing who that week, and, somebody plays 2 or 3 days before you and you get them in the playoffs. It's like they got a whole week to prepare. We got 3 or 4 days to prepare,
Right. It's right. I mean, do you feel like the sentiment is moving that way? I certainly do.
I think it's really, I think it's community based, Sean. I think, the towns, like, you talk to Tom Brockett and Ansonia,
Oh, yeah.
that Thanksgiving Day football game is like very important. And there's other, like Madison, Hand and Guilford have moved it to the Wednesday night. Shelton's not playing Derby. They're playing Xavier, I want to say on like Monday or Tuesday, I think.
Yeah, like a Tuesday night.
Yeah, Tuesday night. So you have a lot of different things there. And again, as people change, traditions tend to change. And that's what I think you're starting to see with a lot of these cases.
Well, everything comes to an end at some point. I mean, I know there's plenty of guys who are out there who would love to not get rid of it. And I'm one of those guys. I think we could still make it work as long as we fix the scheduling. I think that's a major thing. We figure out a way to do that. But that's neither here nor there. Tom, just real quick on West Haven. I mean, like, this is before we let you go, two district, old school district league powerhouses. Last year you guys won with a lot of turnovers, a pick six. They're going to be coming for you. You basically knocked them out of the playoffs. How do you prepare your guys now? They kind of have the target on their backs going into.
I think ultimately, let's be real. It's inspirational what Richie Boucher is doing over there. What he's going through, and the fact that he goes every day. There's no leadership better than leadership by example, and by Richie doing what he's doing, going every day to practice, being there for his kids. I think that has a lot to do with their success this year for him modeling what he's doing and what he's going through to be there every day for his boys. They're a well-coached team from the beginning of the year. They've been the best team I've seen on film all year. They're fast and physical. They come at you. They can run the ball. They can throw the ball. Their special teams are tremendous. So we really got our work cut out for us. I think they got a lot of, all league, all state type players. And, besides Richie, I know, like, Tom Unger, the job he's done in the absence of Rich and some days that Richie wasn't able to make it, and what Tom has done to step up for his program. So, a lot of credit to the coaches over there and their players for how well they're doing, because, they've worked to earn it.
Yeah, it should be a great matchup. My first job when I got here was editor of the Hamden Chronicle back in 2000. Antaj Hawthorne and, later on Jamison Davis and Josh Moore, who's now coach over at O'Brien Tech. And I remember those teams. And, West Haven was great back then. And there were some, even though Hamden they just lost Dodd, who graduated, but even there was every time they play West Haven, it was just a war. And, it was just a battle, and those kids all had and the coaches had a lot of respect for each other too. So, yeah,
it's a old school battle. We play in a lot of sports, and we're very two similar school districts. And, I think we have a lot of respect for each other. It should be a good old fashioned football game on Friday night.
Well, thanks for giving a little time for us here. Giving your side of things. It's interesting to hear the perspective that, when Pete and I are sitting here, like, scream from the rooftops that you don't normally get. So we appreciate you coming on and talking a little bit about that. I'm excited. A little SCC battle, I'm excited.
Well, we'll mark it on the calendar. It's your second game this year. You've been to the SCC. You usually go to NESPAC and all that other stuff. But
hey, I'm on a first name basis with all the Shelton guys and the North Haven guys. It's just, just not the Hamden guys. That's all.
It's all right, boy. I know Pete likes us.
Exactly.
We'll see what happens when he picks them. We'll see for the picks, right?
It's all right. Listen, the rankings, all that stuff doesn't matter to the last one that comes out.
Absolutely. Well, you guys are going to the playoffs, so this is all about seeding. But it's for a little bit of pride too. So I'm anxious. I can't wait to go. It'll be a lot of fun. But Tom, thanks a lot for joining us. We'll see you out there on Friday.
Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, guys. Have a good one.
You too.
So, Pete, Tom Dyer, You know, we gave him a little rebuttal, give us a chance to rebut some of our constant criticisms. And, you know, and I understand where he's coming from. I do. I understand where these guys are coming from. I just think it's a little misguided. I don't, they want to increase the enjoyment of it, or they want to get more kids involved. And I just don't think you need to. I think you can do some fundamentally different things without just adding 2 more playoff rounds. That's my opinion.
Yeah. It was nice to have Tom on to talk, obviously, the game against West Haven, which we're all looking forward to on Friday, but to get, you know, another viewpoint, you know, I think we had a really good conversation with him about that stuff. I get his comparison of saying that an 8-2 West Haven team last year should have been in the playoffs. I totally get that. Is 6 divisions the way of fixing that? No. Or the 6 divisions we have now, is that a way of fixing it? Technically, yes. I don't believe that's the right way. I think if we take one of those 6 divisions, make it a co-op one, make it a tech school one, then I think that it kind of fixes the divisions of the other teams. You know, we're looking at a 5-5 team potentially getting into the playoffs here in Double L.
At least.
I mean, that's not what this is about. You know, it's not okay. I can't stomach when we get to the postseason, and, you know, it's basically like, let's say a 5-5 team gets in from the SCC in M or Double M, let's say, a big hypothetical here, but they play against a Pequot school like SMSA who goes 10-0 in the Pequot. Well, that SCC school is probably going to beat that Pequot school, right? So what we're basically telling them is that, okay, well, the regular season doesn't matter.
Right.
Because you're going to go 5-5, get into the playoffs, and you're going to beat the 10-0 team that, you know, worked in the regular season to go undefeated to get the number 1 seed to get a home game, but you're playing a team from the SEC. That makes no sense.
No.
And it just kind of blows my mind that it was looked at, it was laid out, and everyone was like, yeah, you know what? We should do this. This makes sense. I think I will give them this. I think this could be the beginning of a conversation to now refine what this should look like. That's what I'm hoping. I'm not going to hold my breath, but that's what I'm hoping is that, okay, this is the first step, and now we're going to start the process of refining this to be better. But I'm not 100% sure on that. This is just me being positive. And if you listen to the show, I'm rarely positive. So that's just kind of my hope is, you know, we've said it before. If you look at the tech schools and the Pequots, that's what, 32 teams, I think you said, Sean. That'd be a great division in the playoffs. And then you could take them out of the 4 and maybe we go to 5 divisions. I don't know. I hope this is the beginning of more conversations to fix this system because it is truly broken.
With that said, Pete, what do we got on the Pickups podcast? We had a terrible week.
Yeah, shout out to the 8 Ball. But the games to pick this week, we're like we always do. We're starting up in the CCC. We got Weathersfield 7-1 going to Middletown. The Blue Dragons are 8-2. Then in the ECC, we got a battle of 4 versus 4. Fitch at East Lyme. Then down in the NVL, Ansonia 8-0 going to Seymour to play the 6-2 Wildcats with quarterback Caden Dressick. In the Pequot, Rockville 5-2 was in the Class M finals last year. They're going to Cromwell, Portland. Pearson Park, they're going to play the defending Class S champions. In the SEC, we talked about it at length. 8-0 Hamden at Ken Strong against the 8-0 Blue Devils. SWC Weston 3-4 at Notre Dame Fairfield 4-4. We got 6-2 Platt at 6-2 Bloomfield. Naugatuck 7-1 at Woodland in the Pinot Trophy game, who's also 7-1. North Haven 7-1 at Fairfield Prep 5-3. And in the final game that we're picking this week, we got Joel Barlow at 7-1 going to New Milford to play the Green Wave, who are 5-3. There are some conferences we didn't pick this week. The FCIAC didn't really have a game that was worth picking in terms of like coin flip kind of thing. So we kind of spread the love throughout the other conferences with the big matchups.
Thank you, Pete. So that is so look forward to that every Thursday morning on GameTimeCT. And this is the last week of all the Everybody Plays Friday night. And we all scramble to figure out what happened the next week. And then it's on to the bye week and the extra games there. And then it's on to Thanksgiving. And away we go. Can't wait. I'm all fired up. Thanks for joining us. Thank you, Tom Dyer, for joining us and giving a little... I'm excited about that game, giving us a little pumping that game up a bit. And that's it. Let's get out of here, Pete. So for him, I'm me. This has been the Meat Grinder on Game Time CT.
Love you all.